So this is a figure drawing by
I'm going to use the bathroom.
JS Sargent.
Can I use a small piece of paper? Or should it be a big piece of paper?
So we're going to start today with an actual gesture drawing. And we haven't done much of that. But in a gesture drawing, what you're starting with is what some people call a line of action. So we're going to try to very lightly generate the main line through the figure to the ground, and then it bifurcates down here and goes like that. This is a drawing by JS Sargent. And we're not committing to anything yet. I'm going to mass in the rib cage and the pelvis. And because his weight is partly supported by this pole, I'm going to put the pole in and wrap this around and get that. So that's what we'd call a finished gesture drawing. If you ever go to life drawing class, the model will sometimes spend a few minutes just doing 30-second poses, and that's sort of what you're trying to achieve in 30 seconds or a minute. And this is not a particularly good one, but it's going to serve as a sort of armature that we can start building the rest of the drawing on. The next thing we're going to do is try to refine this into what's called the envelope, and we're going to try to retain a very open feeling. We're not committing to any lines yet. We're looking at angles and distances. And we're trying to understand this in terms of straight lines as much as possible. And I would encourage you to just not do any dark lines. And some of you know who you are, tend to go dark really fast. And we've also talked about this as what's called crating, where we're just sort of imagining the smallest box that we could build to contain this person. And we can start, in order to improve your work, you want to start looking for relationships of things not just that are next to each other, but things that are further apart. Like if we extend this angle, you see we end up just in front of the heel. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to get this angle, and the heel ends up being just behind it. And inside this shape we have a negative space. Sort of like that. And we have another negative space inside here between the pole and the and the form of the body. So the space I'm thinking about is, I'm going to outline it over here for you. And we are thinking of this as a fairly abstract form at this stage. So I just noticed that I've sort of got a little problem with my pole's angle, so I'm going to tilt it a little more the other way. And that's what I learned when I compared this shape here to the same shape in the original. And you should also try to stay sensitive to how this shape relates in size and position to this shape, which is opposite. So that shape, we're going to bring that down to the ground like this. And this shape is inside here like this. There's two ways to build a figure. One is from the inside out and one is from the outside in. When we start with gesture, we're sort of doing inside out. We're thinking about interior forms like the pelvis and the skull. When we work on the envelope, we're trying to work from the outside in. And by switching back and forth between those two ways of seeing and thinking about the figure, you can rapidly improve your skills. But you don't want to get stuck just thinking about it one way. So we've got a negative space right here. Between the head and the arm. And if you were going to work on a really long study of this, you'd probably want to measure all these little spaces, but we're doing a quick study, so we're just going to freely draw what we see, and we're going to accept that some things are going to be wrong. When I've drawn alongside some of the artists that are currently studying at Lime Academy, it's not unusual for them to spend several hours or even days just getting to this point where the envelope is, where they're satisfied that the envelope is correct and they get it perfect. Like, this is not perfect. So the thing that I'm always going to do next is the face, because as we discussed when you were doing the proportion unit, that's the thing that is going to give you the best clues about proportion of the rest of the body. So let's come around this shoulder. I'm going to draw the hairline because I think that's going to give us the best clue about which way the head is turned. And the ear. Now, glancing back and forth between my drawing and the original right now, I'm feeling like I've got a little too much face and not enough hair. We're really looking down at this head, so I'm going to drop that hairline a little bit. And look at the economy with which Sargent has represented this face. There's like eyebrow, eye, bottom of the nose, and you can sort of see the top of the mouth. And you can see the angle of the jaw right here. And that's it. The challenge is getting everything to read the right scale for the figure. But since we blocked it in accurately enough, I think the head's going to read okay. And to check, I'm going to back out again. You can take a step back from your drawing. And yeah, that feels okay to me. The head itself is feeling a little small. I'm going to bump out the back of his hair a little bit. Okay, having done what we can with the face, this is a charcoal drawing, so there's a lot of smudging going on here, so I'm going to go ahead and shade my face down and smudge it a little. And I feel like I have a little problem here with not enough width through the torso. So what I'm going to do now is shadow map the drawing. And I'm going to just think about all these shadow shapes kind of abstractly. And I'm going to give my brain a few more clues about what's going on here by shading things down. So without getting too much into what's happening with the anatomy, I'm just going to look at this as a big shadow shape. And I'm going to color in my shadows as I map them. Noticing that this shadow ends here at the top of the external oblique muscle and then re-emerges down here at the iliac crest. And you see what just happened to my drawing? It becomes a lot more legible as a three-dimensional form. And now the problem that I'm feeling is happening up here is going to be more easy to resolve, because when I put this shadow shape up here, relating it to this one, it's going to help me give me the extra space I need up here for the shoulder blade, which is really the biggest problem I was having. And I'm going to take a break in just a second and check your work. So the great thing about smudging our shadows is we can push and pull them with the eraser. And when you get in the habit of doing that, you're pushing these shapes of light and dark around the way you would it should feel like you're modeling the figure out of clay, because when you move the shadow shapes this way and that, you're basically reshaping the form. And once you get a little bit of an instinct for what kind of effects you can produce that way, drawing becomes a lot more like sculpture, and that's really how it's supposed to feel. It's supposed to feel like you're building these forms, not like you're just representing them. This is the actual, this dark here is actual spine, which we kind of lose it through here, and then he picks it up again here, and I probably should have made that a little clearer at the stage of the gesture drawing. And now that I have a stronger sense of the form up here, I'm sort of tweaking my envelope a little bit down here, because basically my brain is now able to see this all in 3 dimensions, which I really couldn't before. Okay, so let's see if we can finish this in 5 minutes. We're almost done. Here's a big shadow shape. And see this little triangle of light that corresponds roughly to right above it here would be that there's a depression of the greater trochanter of the femur, and it's kind of collecting this pool of light underneath that depression. Sargent knew a lot more about the anatomy than I do. That's why it's so beautifully represented. It's like he really understood.
Can you take off the red line?
Yeah. So this little overlap is important. These are his abdominal muscles, and they're sort of disappearing behind. I think this overlap is probably the inguinal ligament. And you'll notice that he's really emphasizing the musculature in front of the thigh and then the musculature behind the calf. If you can just remember that. Upper leg, emphasize in most poses you're going to emphasize the muscles in front, and the lower leg doesn't even have any muscles in front, so you're just going to be thinking about this bulge in the back of the lower leg. So we don't have a lot of shading on this leg. So we're just going to draw the outline. this hand. And I'm going to give you a few minutes at the beginning of the next class to finish these. And that's about as far as I'm going to take my drawing. Let me stop this video.